Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lysha and I am the owner of Lysha Be Creative. So if you've been following along so far, you know that we are up to the 6th day in my 8 days of Christmas here on YouTube. So I'm so excited with today's tutorial. Today we are going to be making some little keychains with acrylic blanks. So I'm really excited to share that with you. I actually got these blanks from Shop Vinyl Gallery. Lindsay over there sent me a beautiful care package with so many goodies, and as soon as I saw these blanks, I knew exactly what I would be creating with them. So of course, everything I use in today's tutorial will be listed and linked down in the description box down below. You can also find discount codes and links to all of my social media down there as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial. Okay, so we are starting with these acrylic blanks that I got from Shop Vinyl Gallery. I will definitely make sure to link that website down in the description box on how you can get your hands on these little blanks as well. So they have a paper covering on the back, so I'm just using my weeding tool here to remove that paper backing. And once I am done with that, I'm going to take a sanding block and just kind of scuff up the surface there, and this is just going to help my epoxy stick really well since it'll be sticking directly to the blank. So after it's just gotten a light sand, I'll clean the front side of these blanks off with 91% alcohol and a coffee filter to get them all nice and clean and ready for the next step. So after I've gotten them cleaned up nice and dry, I'm going to just use my painter's tape to tape them to my acrylic paint bottles. So you guys have seen me do this in my tutorial for the Santa milk and cookies tutorial. So I like to use my acrylic paint, since I always have so many around, as kind of my stands or my holders for my acrylic blank keychains that I'm using. It's just helpful because then I can just move the entire piece from area to area and not have to worry about the epoxy shifting, as opposed to putting it on a piece of paper and having to move that paper from my workspace. So that's just kind of how I like to keep those elevated and prevent my epoxy from getting on the underside of my blanks. So I had a little bit of epoxy left from a previous project, and so I'm just going to mix a little bit of Silent Night into my epoxy. And so I'm going to mix that thoroughly, and then I'm going to pour some of this epoxy with glitter in it onto my heart-shaped acrylic blank. So I like to use my stir stick to help me spread out that epoxy in a nice even layer across the entire blank, and it's kind of like frosting a cookie, I suppose you could say, or I like to think of it kind of like painting within the lines as well. That's kind of how I think of it. It's just making sure that you are getting the epoxy as close to the edges as you can without it going over the edge, and making sure that you have enough epoxy to spread that layer on evenly. So you may have to add epoxy, but definitely don't start with a whole bunch in the center, just because if you do have too much epoxy, you're going to get a lot of flooding on the edges, which is going to cause your epoxy to roll off and cause you more issue down the road. So I'm going to finish that up, and then we're going to mix up the two glitter colors for the other two blanks. So I've mixed up another 30 mLs of epoxy, and I'm going to split these up into 4 medicine cups. I'm going to have a little bit left over because I'm not going to need all 30 mLs of epoxy for both blanks. And so I'm now going to be putting in my glitters. So the first glitter I'm using is 357 Magnum from Peachy Olive Glitters. I'm then using Athena, which is a fine cut of, or I'm using Goddess rather, a fine cut of Athena from Peachy Olive Glitters. I'm using Chit Chat, which is that matte pink that we used in my tutorial for ornaments, and then the final color is On the Hunt from Shop Vinyl Gallery. So I'm going to get these glitters all mixed up, and then we are going to apply these directly to the blanks. Using the same strategy that we did before, I'm just going to pour a little bit of the epoxy onto the blank first, and then use that stir stick to help me spread out that epoxy onto the very edges of the blank. So for oddly shaped blanks like this that don't have smooth edges, you definitely want to take your time and just make sure that you are dragging your epoxy to the edges of your blank, making sure that you're not going over, and again, making sure to also be careful not to over pour the amount of epoxy onto your blank. That way you don't get any flooding over the edges. It's just a big mess and a lot of sanding you'd have to do in order to kind of salvage that blank. So I'm going to bring this green all the way up to the star, and then as soon as I have that all the way up to the star, I'm then going to take my glitter epoxy that has goddess in it, that fine gold, and we're going to apply that to the star. So the only tip that I can really give you for applying your epoxy around a hole is to go slow and take it in very small spoonfuls or small batches. You want to make sure that the epoxy is not too thick around that hole, because it will then flood into the center, and it's a little bit of a pain in the butt in order to get that hole clear so that you can put your keychain hardware through that. So that tree is now done. It's been a long week, guys, I think. That tree is now finished, and we are going to move on to the smaller tree. So we're going to use Chit Chat for the base of this tree. So doing the exact same thing that I did before. As you see, I did a little bit of over pouring there. I went a little too fast. So definitely, if you do that, cleanup is super quick and super easy. Just make sure you do it quickly. Right after I finished putting the epoxy on this entire blank, I took a baby wipe and just kind of swooped under that area and along the edges to make sure that that epoxy wasn't going to cure there, so I didn't have to do any sanding, because you guys know how much I dislike sanding if I can avoid it. So as soon as I get Chit Chat all the way up to the star, we're going to take that silver epoxy glitter mixture I have there to apply that glitter to the top around the star. So same thing, small little scoops with my stir stick around the star. And this one I ended up over pouring slightly because I had a little bit of an issue with getting my hardware through the hole. If you do run into a situation where your epoxy covers the hole, I noticed it when the epoxy was still in the very early stages of being wet and hadn't fully cured. So I was able to take my sharp weeding tool and just poke a hole through it to keep that hole open. But in the event it does cure, you can heat up your weeding tool, and because it's hot, it will melt away that epoxy and just kind of force your weeding tool through that hole so you can open up that section. After my epoxy has fully cured, I did use Quick Coat for this, so the cure time was super quick, but I did leave it overnight. I am going to take them off the little stands that I had them on, and we're going to remove the backside, and we're going to be replacing the backside with some vinyl. So I have 3 pieces of vinyl that I got, 2 of which were from Shop Vinyl Gallery. I'll link that in the description. And the one on the left side of the screen is from the Vinyl Cottage. So that is a knit sweater patterned vinyl that I had some scrap left over on. So I'm going to apply this first vinyl onto my larger tree acrylic blank. And so once I've gotten that nice and smooth and there's no bubbles, I'm going to take my craft knife and I'm going to cut all the way around the edge of this. And that's going to be just to remove all of the excess overlap that I have of the vinyl, because obviously it's not a perfect match or a perfect fit. So I love the fact to add patterned vinyl to a blank, because sometimes I feel like acrylic keychains or like using blanks for keychain can get a little boring if you only add glitter. I think that adding a pattern on the back side or one side just is so cute, and it's just such a cute design friendly idea. So I'm going to finish cutting this, and the one tip I will say is definitely make sure you're grabbing a new blade when you're doing this. This took me a little bit of time because my blade was not super sharp. I had this craft knife for a couple days, and so using all of the cups and working with cups, it definitely dulled down my blade a bit. So I do end up switching to a brand new blade and a new craft knife so that I can get all of these cut quickly, and taking your time because you are going around a lot of corners and a lot of edges for this detailed of a blank. So I'm going to speed up this section, and then we are going to move into applying the other 2 pieces of patterned vinyl to our blanks. So with the second tree, the same exact thing, except for I did end up switching blades here to make sure that I had a nice sharp craft knife to be able to cut around these small edges. And the other thing that you can do is to pull taut your vinyl. So just like you would on a cup, to make sure that you're getting a super straight line, pulling kind of down around those edges so that you can cut a very nice line and kind of see the edge of your blank better. So that is another kind of tip that I found as I was putting the patterned vinyl on these blanks that definitely helped me cut this efficiently and effectively around the entire blank. So with my blanks back on their stands, I'm going to mix a little bit of this mica powder that I got from Shop Vinyl Gallery. It's a very fine white glitter, and it's just so pretty. So I added a little bit of this to my epoxy, and then I'm going to apply the epoxy to the top side of my acrylic blanks. So here's the final application of my glitter epoxy to the last blank, and as soon as all of them have that thin layer of epoxy over top of the vinyl, definitely make sure that you take your torch and pop those bubbles so that you have a bubble-free shine in your epoxy. So these will sit for another 4 to 5 hours until they're completely cure before we can get into applying the hardware to assemble our keychains. So this is my faux leather. I made a couple faux leather bows. Although this isn't a full tutorial on how to print them, it's really easy, and how to assemble them is even simpler. So you're going to see me do that here. I got this bow template from an Etsy shop, which I'll link down in the description box, but I saw a tutorial from Jessica Flynn. She did these little bow keychains to add to her acrylic blanks, and so I wanted to add a couple of bow extensions to a couple of the acrylic blanks that I was working with, just because I had this plaid and I thought I have to use this plaid. It's the season for plaid, and so it would be a shame if I didn't. So I'm just going to put all of these pieces together. I've already assembled the red buffalo plaid one already, as you can see in the background there. For the final piece, that little rectangle piece that goes around the center, I'm going to attach the jump ring to the center of that so that I have something to adhere this bow to the rest of my keychain hardware. So I'm just going to use hot glue to glue those two pieces together there, and then I'll be able to get into assembling the rest of the hardware to my keychains. So I'm going to start assembling these keychains. So I'm using a combination of the jump rings that come in the pack of the keychain extension attachments that I got from Amazon. I'll link all of these items in the description box down below, so make sure you check that out so that you can check out some of these keychain hardware pieces that I like to use. I like to use a combination of like the regular key ring ones, and then I really love the ones that have the attachment on, or the smaller ones that have the attachment on the side that you can like hook to keys much quicker than having to use that round keychain piece. So I just use jump rings to attach everything. There's no real like way I feel to attach your keychains. You can do it however you want. I just wanted to make sure that my pom-pom that I purchased from Amazon and my acrylic blank are the same height when I hold up that larger ring. So I'm going to do the same with the rest of these blanks. I'm using my jump rings, and then I'm using these little tassels that come as part of the keychain set, I guess you could say. Everything again will be linked in that description box. So I'm just kind of assembling them. I'm using a jump ring to attach to my trees or to the holes in the acrylic blank, and then attaching those to the bottom piece of that keychain ring section. So I'm going to speed up the rest of this, and then that will be it. I'll pretty much be done with this tutorial. I really hope that you enjoyed today's tutorial. It definitely was a fun one, definitely different from what I have done in the past, since I've done mostly cup tutorials. So this week has been such a blast and so much fun to be able to put together different tutorials and things that I do outside of cup making. A lot of additives and things that I like to add to orders or add to my Etsy shop that is not just strictly cups. So I really do hope that you enjoyed today's tutorial. Make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow for day 7.